Title: Requiem for a Fallen Earth. The 22nd century was supposed to be humanity's golden age. The discovery of quantum propulsion allowed Earth to reach the stars, and humanity surged outward, driven by ambition, curiosity, and an unshakable desire to conquer. The first colonies were peaceful, scientific outposts on distant worlds, but that peace would not last. Not when the universe was home to older, darker forces. The Ajari were one such force. An ancient empire stretching across countless systems, they were powerful, cold, and merciless. For millennia, they ruled the stars without opposition. Their civilization, built on domination and fear. They had seen others rise and fall, civilizations burn to the ground before they could reach their potential. The Ajari believed in one simple truth: only the strong survive. When the humans came, they were a curiosity, a new species with boundless ambition but little understanding of the cost of their aspirations. At first, the Ajari watched with disdain. Humanity's reach was limited. Their technology, primitive compared to the Ajaris, was not a threat. But then, the humans started pushing further, faster. They sent missions to the farthest corners of the galaxy, and the Ajari began to feel something they hadn't in centuries: unease. The humans' rapid expansion could not be allowed to continue. This would not be another cycle of weaklings surviving only to become a thorn in the side of the Ajari. They decided to act. The first strike came without warning. A small human colony on Pindara, a lush world on the edge of Ajari space, was the first target. The humans had established a research station there, a peaceful outpost focused on terraforming and ecological studies. The Ajari descended like a plague, their warships massive and silent, blotting out the sun. They arrived with no declaration of war, no ultimatum. They simply unleashed hell. Thousands of human colonists died in the blink of an eye, their cities incinerated in fiery storms of energy. The planet's forests, once teeming with life, were turned to ash. There was no mercy, no quarter given. The Ajari didn't view the humans as worthy opponents, only as obstacles to be obliterated. Pindara's survivors were left to flee, but the Ajari gave no time for escape, no time for preparation. In the chaos of destruction, thousands of human ships tried to break through the blockade. None of them made it. One message reached Earth, a desperate transmission from the colony's leader. The Ajari, they burn everything, they enjoy it. Please, don't let us be forgotten. Humanity did not respond with diplomacy. The leaders of Earth, cold and pragmatic, saw the situation for what it was. The Ajari had to be stopped. No matter the cost, war was inevitable. But they underestimated the brutality of their enemies. The human fleets, though quickly assembled, were ill-prepared for the savagery they would face. The Ajari, with their superior technology and relentless tactics, overwhelmed the human armada in a series of horrific, one-sided battles. The Ajari didn't fight to win. They fought to destroy. Each engagement was a slaughter, where human ships were torn apart like paper, their crews massacred without a second thought. Humanity's advanced weaponry did little to slow the Ajari. The humans tried to push back, using guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and desperate strikes, but the Ajari adapted with terrifying speed, crushing any hope of victory. One by one, the outer colonies fell. World after world burned. Entire populations, billions of men, women, and children, were exterminated. And the Ajari showed no mercy. Didn't just kill, they obliterated human civilization with cold, unfeeling efficiency. No world was too far, no station too small to escape their wrath. Admiral Seraphine Graves, once a symbol of humanity's brightest hopes, became the leader of the last remaining fleet, a ragged group of survivors who had no illusions left. They weren't fighting for victory anymore. All they could do was hide and wait. One by one, human colonies fell, and then Earth itself, humanity's cradle, the jewel of their species, was struck. The Ajari didn't just conquer it. They subjugated it. They razed entire cities, turned forests to ashes, and dragged humanity's great cities into their iron grip. The Ajari's technology was too advanced, their tactics too brutal. Earth was a prize, and the Ajari would leave no trace of rebellion. By the time the human resistance had even begun to form, it was too late. The Ajari's forces were everywhere. They controlled the skies, the seas, and the very land itself. Any attempt at rebellion was crushed before it could even ignite. Resistance fighters were hunted down like animals. The people of Earth were stripped of their freedom, their dignity, their hope. Earth had become a prison, a world of sorrow and ash. The Ajari didn't just conquer, they erased. They rewrote history, eradicating every trace of human culture. The monuments, the books, the paintings, everything that defined humanity was destroyed or repurposed for the Ajari's twisted purposes. Those who had been too defiant, too unyielding, were subjected to unspeakable horrors. Some were made examples of, their bodies mutilated and displayed as warnings to the rest. Others were worked to death, used as slaves to build the Ajari's twisted vision of the future. It was a time of darkness, but as always, where there is oppression, there is resistance. A new kind of rebellion was born from the ashes of Earth. It was not the ragtag, poorly equipped resistance of old. The survivors, driven to the brink of extinction, had learned what true survival meant. They were no longer simply humans. They were something darker, something willing to do anything to take back their home. They were the ghosts of Earth, those who had survived the Ajari's first wave of destruction and had been forced into hiding, into the shadows of their own world. These humans no longer fought for the freedom of the galaxy or for ideals. They fought for revenge. And the Ajari had underestimated one thing in all their arrogance. They had not killed the will to fight. The ghosts formed cells across Earth's ruined cities, operating in secrecy, striking without warning. They were no longer bound by morality or conventional rules of warfare. They ambushed Ajari patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and assassinated key officers. They used humanity's own ingenuity to turn the Ajari's weapons and technology against them, hacking into their systems, disrupting their control over Earth. Each small victory brought a taste of vengeance, but more importantly, it sparked something the Ajari couldn't foresee: hope. From the shadows, the rebellion spread. The remnants of humanity, scattered across Earth, gathered in secret. The ghosts were joined by those who had once been passive, beaten down by years of suffering. They came from every corner of the world, former scientists, soldiers, farmers, and politicians, united by the fire the Ajari had tried to extinguish. They learned to be silent, to strike in ways that made the Ajari doubt their own control. Entire districts would vanish into the night, only to reappear in the form of 1,000 voices raised in anger. Whole cities would fall silent for hours, only for the Ajari to discover that every communications hub had been taken, every security system disabled, and every surveillance camera turned against them. The Ajari's response was brutal, of course. The more the humans fought back, the more vicious the reprisals. Entire populations were dragged from their homes, tortured in public as an example to others. It was a war of attrition, a brutal, unrelenting spiral of suffering. And yet, humanity never stopped fighting. Amidst the growing resistance, the Ghosts found an unexpected ally, Admiral Seraphine Graves and the last remnants of her fleet. The Admiral and her crew, having long since abandoned the hope of ever reclaiming Earth, now saw the rebels as their best chance for revenge. The Admiral, hardened by years of losing everything, brought her ships and her experience to the cause. She and the fleet helped the Ghosts plan covert operations, providing advanced intelligence, weapons, and a renewed strategic approach. The survivors weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to crush the Ajari Empire, once and for all. In the underbelly of Earth's ruins, there was another, more desperate plan unfolding. The Ghosts knew that they could never defeat the Ajari on Earth, not with sheer number or firepower, but they also knew that the Ajari's rule was not invincible. There were cracks in their empire. There were allies who resented their iron fist, systems that could be exploited. Humanity's survival was bound not just to Earth, but to the stars. The Ghosts began to form an underground network, communicating with other surviving human fleets scattered across the galaxy. They began building the infrastructure needed to mount a final escape, not to run, but to fight. The plan was simple. If Earth could not be saved, they would turn it into a trap, a dead world for the Ajari to rot in. In the shadows of Earth's ruined sky, a fleet was born, cobbled together from old warships, salvaged Ajari technology, and human ingenuity. With Admiral Graves and her fleet aiding them, the Ghosts were no longer just hiding. They were preparing for war. The rebellion, once a faint whisper, had become a storm. But the Ghosts weren't alone. Other alien species, many of whom had been crushed or oppressed by the Ajari, took notice of the human resistance. The Ajari's reach had extended too far, and now that the human fire had ignited, other forces rose from the ashes. The Zathi, once enslaved by the Ajari, now saw the humans as an ally against their shared oppressor. The Chiron, a race of exiled warriors, pledged their ships and their swords to the cause. Even the Varak, a reclusive species with ancient knowledge of the Ajari's weaknesses, offered their technology and wisdom. Together, the alien species and humanity formed an unprecedented alliance, an alliance forged in the fires of oppression. As their fleets surged toward the Ajari capital, they knew the stakes. This was no longer just about Earth. It was a war to free the galaxy from the Ajari's iron grip. The day came when the rebellion's fleet emerged from the ruins of Earth's orbit. Their targets were not just the Ajari's strongholds in the galaxy, they were coming for the heart of their empire. It was not enough to simply win back Earth. The Ajari had to learn that they had not crushed humanity. They had awakened a fury that no amount of fire could smother. The final war was no longer a question of victory. It was a question of vengeance. As the human and alien fleet surged toward the Ajari capital, 1,000 voices in 100 languages cried out in a single, unified shout. They would no longer be slaves. They would never be forgotten. The flames of Earth had ignited a new rebellion. As the Ajari learned too late, you cannot kill the will to survive.